Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The April sun streamed through the large bay windows of Bankwell and Company, casting golden reflections on the marble floor. The day seemed ordinary, and yet, for 16-year-old Maya Johnson, it was anything but. Dressed in just jeans and a hoodie, she approached the counter to make a simple transaction. Behind the counter, Sarah Whitmore, a 10-year employee, adjusted her glasses and glanced at Maya. In her mind, the girl was just another customer. But there was something about her walk, her accent, her way of speaking, and Sarah didn't bother to hide her judgment. "You can't do this alone, young lady," Sarah said in a cold, condescending tone, ignoring the shock and embarrassment on Maya's face. "You should be accompanied by an adult." Maya, surprised and hurt, tried to justify herself, but Sarah interrupted her with an impatient sigh. The other customers cast embarrassed glances, some whispering, others looking away. What Sarah didn't know, however, was that this teenager wasn't just anyone. Her mother, Victoria Johnson, wasn't just a powerful woman in the business world, she was the CEO of Bankwell and Company. In a few hours, Sarah's trivial insult would turn into an incident that would redefine her career, her reputation, and her entire life. Maya, her face red but her eyes determined, backed away slowly. She knew one thing: some mistakes could never go unpunished, especially when they were made without knowing the true power behind the seemingly vulnerable. After the incident at the teller, Maya walked out of the bank, her heart pounding, clutching her bag. The city streets suddenly seemed larger, more hostile, and every gaze seemed to be upon her. Yet beneath her fear, a spark of defiance shone. She couldn't let this humiliation pass. Back home, she told her mother, Victoria Johnson, everything. The CEO, accustomed to delicate matters, remained silent for a few seconds, staring at her daughter with a mixture of surprise and pride. "Sarah Whitmore?" Victoria asked, her voice calm but icy. Maya nodded, still shocked by the employee's arrogance. Victoria stood up and walked over to her desk, where she handled files and made strategic decisions. She tapped a few keys on her computer, browsing through the company's archives. Sarah Whitmore immediately appeared, 10 years of service, no formal complaints, but a slightly condescending reputation according to some colleagues. Victoria allowed herself a small smile. She knew the problem wasn't just with Maya or Sarah, but with the arrogance that sometimes plagued those who thought their position gave them the right to judge. The next day, Victoria went incognito to the branch where Sarah worked. She observed every detail: the interactions with customers, the mechanical gestures, the authoritative tone. Then, with a simple but decisive gesture, she asked to speak to Sarah. "Sarah Whitmore, we need to discuss your behavior yesterday," Victoria said, her voice soft but heavy with gravity. Sarah paled slightly at the sound of the name. She hadn't known that the girl she'd humiliated was none other than the CEO's daughter. This first face-to-face meeting would change the course of his career, and teach him that certain missteps can cost much more than simple excuses. Sarah Whitmore felt her heart sink when she recognized Victoria Johnson's voice. She had heard of the CEO, but she never imagined she would find herself face-to-face with her in such an awkward situation. You're Maya's mother?" Sarah stammered, trying to hide her discomfort. Victoria nodded slowly, a small smile playing on her lips. "Yes. And I was very surprised to hear how you treated my daughter yesterday." Sarah looked down, unable to meet Victoria's penetrating gaze. The pride and arrogance that had driven her to judge Maya had just come back at her like a boomerang. She felt each second dragging on, aware that her professional future had just been turned upside down. Victoria continued, "In this bank, every customer deserves respect and consideration, regardless of age, color, or status. You are supposed to be an example to younger employees, not an obstacle to their dignity." Sarah tried to apologize, but the words seemed oddly weak. I didn't mean to," she whispered. Victoria raised her hand. "I'm not talking about your intentions. I'm talking about your actions. And those actions will have consequences." In a matter of moments, the room became the scene of a silent power lesson. Sarah understood she had just crossed a line she should never have. Every gesture, every word, every condescending look had been recorded, and would be recalled with an intensity she had never imagined. Outside the bank, Maya had unknowingly become the catalyst for a change that would not only right an injustice, but also expose the fragility of those who underestimate others. The next morning, Sarah Whitmore arrived at the bank with a knot in her stomach. She knew something had changed, but she wasn't sure exactly what. The regular customers seemed to be eyeing her curiously, as if some secret was hanging over the branch. Victoria Johnson, true to her plan, had decided not to immediately reveal the truth about her presence. She wanted to see how Sarah would behave under covert surveillance. Sarah's every move was meticulously noted, her tone with customers, her attitude toward her colleagues, the speed of her service. But Sarah was no longer the same. She felt a tension in the air she couldn't explain. The stares seemed more piercing, the whispers more insistent. She tried to smile, to pretend, but the discomfort was palpable. At noon, Victoria took a decisive step. She entered the break room, where Sarah was having her coffee. "Sarah, I think it's time we discuss your behavior more seriously," she said, her voice calm but authoritative. Sarah swallowed, unable to respond. Every fiber of her body screamed that she was in professional danger, but she still didn't understand the magnitude of the situation. Victoria took a file out of her bag and placed it on the table. "Yesterday, you humiliated a client. That client is my daughter. And your actions will not go unpunished." Sarah's eyes widened. Fear mingled with disbelief. You mean?" she stammered. Victoria nodded. "Exactly. You underestimated someone without knowing who she was. That's a mistake you can't make up for with a simple apology. You'll have to make amends properly." Sarah felt the weight of her years of confidence and routine crumble. For the first time, she understood that her actions had a price, and that this lesson would mark her career forever. The next day, Victoria decided it was time to make the lesson public. She called all the branch employees together for a special meeting. Word spread quickly, no one knew exactly why, but the atmosphere was charged with tension. Sarah panicked and wondered how she would explain the CEO's presence in the meeting room. She thought she could apologize quickly, minimize the incident, and walk away unscathed. But Victoria had a completely different approach. As soon as the meeting began, Victoria calmly walked to the center of the room. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice calm but commanding. The chatter immediately ceased. "I'm here to discuss a very important topic, the respect, fairness, and dignity of every client and colleague." All eyes turned to Sarah, who felt her legs buckle. Victoria continued, "Yesterday, an unfortunate situation occurred. A customer, Maya Johnson, was treated condescendingly and unfairly by one of our employees." A heavy silence filled the room. Colleagues exchanged awkward glances, some shaking their heads, others murmuring. Victoria approached Sarah and said softly but clearly, "Sarah Whitmore, you thought you could judge someone without knowing their story or identity. That is behavior we will not tolerate here." Sarah, flushed with embarrassment, tried to whisper an apology, but Victoria raised her hand. "This isn't about a simple apology. It's about understanding the impact of your actions and making amends for the harm done." Then Victoria turned to all the employees, "Let this situation serve as a lesson to all of us. Every customer deserves respect and consideration. Every action has consequences. And no discrimination will go unpunished, especially when it is motivated by prejudice." Sarah bowed her head, aware that her reputation had just been shattered in front of all her colleagues. Maya, though discreet, watched from afar, a mixture of relief and pride lighting up her face. For her, this public humiliation was a silent victory against injustice. After the meeting, Sarah walked back to her desk, trembling. Every step seemed to weigh a ton. She knew her colleagues were looking at her with a mixture of judgment and curiosity. The air in the branch had become almost electric. Victoria, however, hadn't yet finished her lesson. She asked Sarah to join her in her office for a private discussion. Sarah, her heart pounding, complied. Sarah, Victoria began calmly, you have to understand that what you did doesn't just go away with an apology. Sarah nodded, ashamed. I understand. I'm sorry. Victoria placed a hand on the file she had prepared. You will spend a full day accompanying Maya Johnson through all her dealings at the bank. You will see the world through the eyes of someone you underestimated. You will understand the weight of your actions. Sarah felt her heart stop. But, she's just a teenager, she whispered. Victoria smiled softly, but firmly. Exactly. And you believed that someone's age or status gave you the right to judge them. You're going to learn why every customer deserves respect and dignity, regardless of their age, appearance, or name. Throughout the day, Sarah followed Maya through every step, waiting in line, asking questions of advisors, signing documents. Each innocent interaction Maya had became a cruel reminder to Sarah of her past arrogance. Her colleagues watched, some with amusement, others with silent satisfaction. By the end of the day, Sarah was exhausted, not only physically but emotionally. She had finally understood that her prejudices and arrogance could hurt and humiliate someone, even without intention. And this lesson, orchestrated by Victoria, would remain etched in her memory forever. In the following days, Sarah tried to behave more professionally, but she still felt the weight of her mistake. Every time she caught Maya's eye in the branch, a mixture of embarrassment and respect grew between them. Maya, for her part, remained calm and confident, aware that her mother had orchestrated every step to ensure the lesson was complete. Victoria, ever attentive, decided the time had come to test Sarah's true change. She called another meeting with all the employees and introduced Maya as a volunteer for a special project, guiding and assisting new customers with their banking needs, especially those who felt intimidated or misunderstood. Sarah, Victoria said, addressing her directly, I want you to work with Maya to oversee this project. You'll need to collaborate closely, listen, and learn. Sarah felt her heart clench again, but this time it wasn't fear, it was awareness. She had a chance to show that she could change, that she could right the wrong. The first few hours were awkward. Sarah tried to speak politely, to correct her old habits, but Maya patiently guided her. Gradually, Sarah began to understand the true impact of her past actions. Every grateful smile from a customer, every sincere thank you, became a reminder of what she had missed by judging too quickly. At the end of the day, Sarah found herself feeling a deep respect for Maya. She understood that this teenager wasn't just a connection to the CEO, but a person worthy of consideration, trust, and respect. Victoria, watching from afar, gave a small smile. The lesson she had intended to teach was turning into a real transformation. But she knew that Sarah's journey wasn't over yet. Redemption wasn't measured by apologies alone, but by continued action. A week later, Victoria decided to push Sarah even further. She set up a situation where Sarah would have to treat a difficult client, alone but under Maya's watchful eye. This client, chosen for her demanding nature and high expectations, was a simulation designed to test whether Sarah had truly changed. As soon as the customer entered the branch, Sarah felt her anxiety rise. The customer's first words were cold and condescending, eerily reminiscent of the attitude she herself had had toward Maya. For a moment, Sarah felt her old arrogance return, but she pulled herself together. Maya, silent but attentive, observed every move. She didn't intervene, leaving Sarah to fend for herself, but her encouraging gaze reminded Sarah that she must act with respect and patience. Gradually, Sarah began to listen attentively to the client, understanding her needs, and responding calmly and empathetically. Every word, every genuine smile, reinforced her transformation. The client, amazed by Sarah's sudden change, ended her visit with gratitude and compliments, leaving Sarah stunned by the difference a kind attitude could make. After the simulation, Victoria took Sarah aside. Now you see that respect and listening are not just professional obligations, but values that transform every interaction. Sarah nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. She knew this ordeal marked a turning point. Not only had she realized the error of her judgment toward Maya, but she was beginning to actually change her behavior. Maya, looking at her, gave a small smile. Their relationship had evolved from humiliation and resentment to understanding and mutual respect. Sarah knew she still had a long way to go, but for the first time, she felt the possibility of true redemption. A few days later, Victoria decided it was time to conclude the lesson decisively. She called a meeting with the entire branch team, this time for Sarah to publicly share her experience and demonstrate what she had learned. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Talking about her mistake and her transformation in front of her colleagues seemed intimidating, almost humiliating. But she knew it was necessary. Victoria spoke first. Today we are going to celebrate an important lesson about respect and dignity. Sarah Whitmore has agreed to share her experience and show everyone that it is possible to change and repair one's mistakes. Sarah stood up slowly, her hands trembling slightly. She took a deep breath and began, "Yesterday, I thought judging a customer without knowing her was acceptable. But I was wrong. I humiliated Maya Johnson, our CEO's daughter, and I underestimated the importance of every interaction we have here." She paused, her eyes lowered, then looked up. "Thanks to Victoria and Maya, I learned that every customer deserves respect and consideration. Every action has an impact. And today, I pledge to never forget that lesson again." Silence followed by applause filled the room. Colleagues, surprised but impressed, looked at Sarah with a new gaze, one of respect and admiration for her courage in admitting her mistakes. Victoria smiled softly, satisfied. Maya, for her part, gave a knowing smile. The message was clear: discrimination and arrogance come at a price, but redemption and respect can transform mistakes into opportunities for growth. Sarah, for the first time since the incident, felt an immense weight lift. She had been confronted, humiliated, tested, and she had survived. But this victory was not only due to herself, but also to Maya and Victoria's wisdom. The following weeks were revealing. Sarah Whitmore, now aware of the importance of respect and listening, applied her new attitudes in all her interactions. Customers noticed the change, and so did her colleagues. Her demeanor was no longer merely professional, it was imbued with sincerity and consideration. Maya, meanwhile, became a role model for younger customers and employees. With her patience and confident attitude, she demonstrated that dignity and resilience could transform even the most challenging situations. Sarah, once arrogant, began to see her not as a judgmental teenager, but as a mentor and partner in improving customer service. Victoria, watching from afar, saw that the lesson had achieved its goal. The branch had changed, and with it, the culture of respect and care for customers. But she also knew that Sarah and Maya's experience was a lasting lesson, a reminder that vigilance against arrogance and discrimination must remain constant. One day, when Sarah was accompanying Maya to guide new clients, she took the liberty of saying to her, "Maya, thank you for showing me what I didn't see. Thanks to you, I've learned to respect every person here, and not just out of obligation, but because it's the right thing to do." Maya smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "I think you really get it, Sarah. And that's the most important thing." For the first time since the initial incident, Sarah felt that her past of judgment and condescension had been erased not by an apology, but by a true transformation. Victoria's lesson had paid off, and Maya and Sarah's relationship, once marked by humiliation and anger, had transformed into one of respect and collaboration. A few months later, the Bankwell and Company branch had changed. The atmosphere was more positive, the employees more attentive, and customers noticed the respect and consideration in every interaction. The tensions and prejudices that had existed previously seemed to have disappeared. Sarah Whitmore, transformed, had become a role model for her colleagues. She often mentored new employees, explaining not only banking procedures but also the importance of respect and empathy. Whenever she saw a hesitant or intimidating customer, she remembered Maya and the lesson Victoria had taught her. Maya, for her part, continued to visit the branch regularly. This time, her role was no longer that of a victim, but of a partner, almost a mentor to Sarah and some of the younger employees. The two young women had developed a bond of mutual respect, and their collaboration had become an example for the entire team. Victoria, watching her two charges, smiled silently. She knew the lesson had paid off, not through fear or humiliation, but through learning and real transformation. The branch had become more humane, more just, and Sarah had found a new professional path, guided by the experience of humility and redemption. One afternoon, while Maya and Sarah were working together, Sarah said quietly, "Thank you, Maya, and thank you, Mrs. Johnson. You taught me something I will never forget." Victoria replied simply, "The most important lessons are not learned through power or authority, but through respect and experience." And today, you both understood that. The sun shone through the windows of the branch, illuminating the faces of those who had grown from this ordeal. The story that had begun with humiliation and prejudice ended with understanding, respect, and renewal. A new beginning, not only for Sarah, but for the entire branch, and for Maya's strength of character.